Hi, good morning. Today is Sunday, January 7th, 2024, and I am sitting here at the capital of Madagascar, Antananarivo, or Ivato Airport. So just to show you where we are right now, there is the Madagascar, and we're going to be flying from the capital city to a island of Mayotte, which is in the Mozambique Channel. It's off the coast of Mozambique, Africa. And this flight is going to take us a couple of hours to complete. So the aircraft, obviously, as you can tell from the picture, it's a DC-6 PMDG rendition of DC-6. We have 12,400 pounds of cargo on board, and we're going to be cruising at flight level 180, 18,000 feet. So let's go ahead and start the setup here. Let me jump into the flight deck and kind of take you through some of my thought process of how I go about completing these flights. So the temperature in the cockpit is 85 degrees. It's scorching heat, so I'm just going to open up some windows here to hopefully cool off the cockpit a little bit while we're getting things ready. The first thing that I normally do when I get into the flight deck, especially in this airplane, is I have to check the circuit breakers, right? So that's something that we have to do anyway, but this aircraft tends to trip circuit breakers at random, and you just don't know when the systems are not working. So it appears that everything here is in good order. Everything should be up. There are 4 switches that are not actionable. They're here. They're not. They're always down. But the rest of them, I believe, all of them are operational. And yesterday, when I got into the cockpit, one of the switches was down. There are some circuit breakers here on the right. And there are the transponder, ADF, GPS, DME, and COM2. So everything looks good here. All right. So power, we'll go to ground power. Turn on electronics. And let's see, the oil quantities look good. Fluid quantities look good. And I'll go ahead and turn on the power to the radios. So this is not meant to be a full tutorial. I'm not an expert on this by any means, but you know, like I was saying before, really the idea is to show maybe hopefully some of the newer pilots that are flying this airplane, you know, what the operation looks like here, what the steps are, and just take you from the beginning of the to the end of the complete flight here. So anyway, this is my OFP, my load sheet. Today's January 7th. Aircraft is DC-6. We're scheduled to leave at 12:40 Zulu time, and we have 20 minutes to complete the run-up, taxi, and all that stuff like that. So we'll be taking off at 1300 Zulu, which should be 8 o'clock, 8 a.m. local time. You can actually see the clock here. It's 7:27 or 22, 7:22. So we'll get about a half hour before we fire up the engines here. Fuel, we're going to be taking 7,589 pounds of fuel with us. This will give us slightly over an hour, about 3,000 pounds of fuel on arrival. So for any contingencies, if we need to go around, you know, we'll have plenty of fuel to do that. So 75.89. So I'm just gonna adjust that. 75. Oops. $75.86. For cargo, we're taking on 12,400 pounds of cargo. It's right here. And the way I load the cargo in is I basically look at the takeoff weight, figuring that we're gonna burn off a couple of 100 pounds of fuel on taxi and run up. Our takeoff weight is 72,356. So I'm just gonna add a couple of 100 pounds to that to account for the fuel that we're gonna burn off before we actually take off. So I'm gonna load the aircraft to 72,456 pounds roughly. And it's 75,285 right now, so I'm just gonna keep adding until we get to 72,556. So $72,555. All right, so that's close enough. All right, so just really easy, simple loading process here. There's nothing really much going on. Check the oil, general condition of the engine here, and I'm just going to total up all the oil quantities here. They're in gallons in this aircraft, so I'm just going to add them all up. 23.1 plus 21.6 plus 20.9 and 22 gives us 87.6 gallons of oil. I'm just going to write that down. .6, and the total airframe time is 173.42. Just going to write that down as well. The reason why I take down the oil at the beginning and the end is because it tells me how much oil the aircraft burns for planning purposes. So this looks good, and the only thing we're going to need to do is just disconnect the ground power once the engines are running. Everything is closed, all the doors and hatches are closed and ready to go. Okay, so let me go ahead and set up the radios real quick. We'll have a departure out of here. It's the TN1E departure with Ankazobi or Tango November transition. So let me go ahead and enter that in here. So I'll just go to the procedures, scroll down to departure, and scroll down to TN1E. I believe that's the correct one. TN1E to Nkazobi, then Uniform Alpha 401 to MG. Okay, and that populates the airport name and transition name. So from here, we'll go to a waypoint called Durba. And if I highlight this symbol right here in green, just by clicking on it, I have to click on it a couple times, I can type in the waypoints here with my keyboard, which makes it super simple. So we'll go to Durba. Enter that in. And it's here. Next waypoint, Yuvgad. Oops. The next one's going to be the Mahajanga, Mike Golf. The one after that is Tican. Sawavi. Then Dzaoudzi VOR Delta Zulu Papa. And then the Pamandzi Airport FMCZ. That's essentially our clearance limit here. There's no control right now here in this area. I'm on VATSIM, just looking at the VATSPY. There's nothing going on right here. This area. Okay, so essentially the flight plan's in. And let's take a look at the departure procedure here. We're going to be taking off on, say, runway 11. So towards the east, we're gonna take off, across the Antananarivo, or Narivo, Antananarivo VOR, 115.1. Set up the Unicom frequency here. And so the TNV VOR is 115.1. If we have to come back and land here for some reason, we'll come back on ILS runway 11. Frequency here is 109.5, so I'm just going to preset that. And I'm going to set nav2 primary on 115.1. Just for backup. And let's see. Ankazobi and DB is 385. I'll put that in the NDB receiver, ADF. Then Mahajanga is going to be on 112.5, so I'm going to put that on nav2 standby. And then we'll take care of it from there. So this is kind of what our flight plan looks like. There's some high elevation here. The airport elevation is about 4,196 feet. I've computed all the takeoff and landing requirements at this airport. So the minimum runway length we need for takeoff here is 4,000 feet based on a gross takeoff weight and the runway length. So we need 4,000 feet for takeoff. And for runway 11, as you can see, it's 10,171 feet long, but we only have 8,793 feet available for landing. So we have enough for takeoff. If we have to come back for a landing, we're going to need 5,600 foot runway, which this is clearly long enough. On landing, we should be a gross weight of 68.8 thousand pounds, and that works out to be minimum runway length of 4,800 feet. The destination runway is 6,345 feet, and we're going to be landing runway 34, it looks like. But on that one, we only have 6,283 feet available. We need 4,800. We have 6,283 available. So planning along enough. But you know, there's going to be a lot of allowance for floating, you know, bleeding off the airspeed. So I'm going to try to nail the landing right on the touchdown marks if possible, and see how it can do. So after the landing, we're going to come back, exit to the right, and park here at the terminal area. Okay. So the elevations, you know, there's high terrain here. Looks like over 8,000 feet. Then it's going to drop off. Where we're landing, it's not much to speak of in terms of elevation. Okay, so at this point, I believe the radios are all set. GPS equipment is configured. The flight plan is configured. And when this GPS comes up, it comes up in localizer mode. However, it's indicating GPS, so it's there's a discrepancy here, and I believe it's the problem with the WT, the working title GNS 430. So essentially, what I have to do is toggle this CDI button a couple times, and now it should sync up. All right, cool. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and go through the flight deck prep real quick. Basically, the flow is going to be top to bottom and then left to right, so crisscross, right? And that's how I do it. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but this is how I do it. The lights, get the lights on. Inverter switches, all three are going to be on. Ground power is connected. Let's get the generators on. Everything here looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and lower the landing lights for when I need them. About 5 or 6 seconds. And open up cowl flaps. Alrighty. The most unpleasant portion of the setup is the fire detection, because it's very annoying. So I'm going to go through this really quick, so just bear with me for a second. It is going to be very annoying for a few seconds, so just bear with me. Okay, that looks good. Anti-ice equipment is all set. The only thing we have to do is turn on the cabin heater master. We're going to be cruising at 18,000 feet, so I'm going to preset the pressurization for our cruise altitude. And the field elevation is 4,100 feet. Alright, so that's 18,000, and the field elevation, that's about right there. For electrical, so the cabin is still baking. I'm not sure if, the air movement is not being simulated here. So for AC power, we have AC that's coming in from the ground unit, and for DC, we're not generating anything right now, so DC is pretty much dead, except for the DC power that we have on the battery, and that looks normal. Okay, moving on down. So our heading is 114. That's the initial heading. So let me take a look at the departure again. So we're going to be taking off on runway 11, cross TNV VOR, and climb to above 6,000 feet, then make a left turn on a heading of 301, and we'll intercept radial 337. There's this strange turn here, and I'm not sure why they don't just align on the outbound radial 337, because I have no way of knowing where to make this turn. There is no reference to any kind of navigation equipment. So I'm just gonna pass the radial 337, then make like a northerly turn to 006 degrees and intercept the radial from the west side, it looks like. So I'm just going to preset the needle to the outbound radial of 336. So left turn to 301 and then on radial 337, right? 301. Three, 337. All right. Altimeter setting. So for weather, I use the government website, the Aviation Weather Center, or aviationweather.gov. They collect all of the current information. This is the official weather, right? They collect all information about most airfields around the world. So this is the go-to outside of the FAA or whatever the regulatory agency will be. But when you come up with this aviationweather.gov website, it comes up with a screen here. So you just click on the current conditions on the map, and it brings you to the map, world map base essentially, and you can zoom into any area of the world. You can also plot your waypoints if you wanted to. There are a bunch of different functions here, but this is our departure point, and as you can see, it's showing 000, and it's essentially 3000 inches of pressure field elevation, right? If you want to learn about these symbologies, there's a pretty nice legend here that kind of explains all the symbols, color codes, and all that stuff. So I'm not going to go into any of that right now, but it's a good idea to just learn what all these symbols mean. Basically, the wind is coming off of the east at 10 knots, it looks like. And there's better than 6 miles of visibility, so I think the weather is definitely VFR on departure. We got some thunderstorms along the way. We're going to cross an area of thunderstorms, which appears to be stationary. It's not moving anywhere. There's an area of thunderstorms north of the arrival point, but they're not. It's also stationary. It's not moving in, so the chances are we're going to have fairly decent weather on the landing here. And the winds on the arrival are going to be from the northwest, and we're going to be landing on runway 34 there, and the visibility is 6+ nautical miles. So just a little bit about the weather. Departure is 3000. I'm just going to go ahead and preset the altimeter. Elevation is correct. We're at about 4 minutes before engines start according to our plan. Transponder, we'll set that to 2200, and I'm gonna click the NDB identifier on. It doesn't really work that well in the Microsoft Flight Sim. Just a little bit up trim. See, gear down, brakes on, flaps up, autopilot disconnected, carb heat is cold, and everything here looks good. So at this point, the flight deck prep is complete. I'm going to go through the before start checklist. Circuit breakers checked. Seat belts, safety belt or seat safety belts, rudder pedals are adjusted. Seat belt and no smoking signs are on. Position signs are on. Water injection pumps will be off. De-icing equipment is off. Cowl flaps open. Fuel booster pumps are off. Cooling turbine switch, it's right here. It's off. Inverter switches are on. Aux blower is off. Voltage regulator light is out. It's right here. This light up here. Generators are on. Ignition switch is off. Heater fuel switch is in normal. So this switch right here. And heater fuel and ignition switches are on system 1. Cabin heat master switch is on. Blinding lights are retracted and off, and I extended them, so let me pull them back up. Don't want to damage the lights on startup. Superchargers are low. Cabin pressure regulator is set. Flight instruments set. Door warning lights. There are 2 lights up here. They're out. Electrical systems checked. Fire detection checked. Windshield heat. So it's I'm gonna keep it off for now. We'll turn it on after the departure on a climb out. Fuel tanks and cross feeds. Let's put the main tanks are on. Cross feeds are off. Prop switches, prop controls are in full forward. And prop control is number 3 auto. Parking brake is set. Mixture controls. Idle cutoff. Autopilot is off. Landing gear lever is down. Trim tabs set. Carb heat cold. And flaps up. Very good. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the engine startup. Okay, so the order of the startup is going to be number 3, 4, 2, and 1. So oil pressure is coming up. Cylinder temps are coming up, and I'm just gonna stabilize it at 1000 RPM. Looks good. Go with number 4. Oil pressure looks normal. And 1000 RPM. Two.
Three. 6. 9. 12.
Got fuel flow, pressure, oil pressure. And number 2 is stable, 1000 RPM. And let's go start up number 1.
3. 6. 9. 12.
Fuel pressure is normal, oil pressure is coming up. RPMs are coming up. Everything looks normal here. I'm gonna go ahead and shut off the fuel booster pumps. Check the generators, DC power is on. Go ahead and disconnect the ground power. And we don't need this anymore. I'm going to go ahead and close the windows at this point. Get some AC on the cabin, start cooling off the cabin a little bit. Doing a quick check here. Flight controls. That's checked, and let's do after startup checklist. Throttles 1000 RPM, fuel booster pumps off, hydraulic system. Hydraulic pressure is normal. It took me forever to find the gauge here, but there it is right there under the co-pilot's on the co-pilot's right side, I guess right bulkhead. Battery selectors, plain battery. Electrical power is disconnected. External power is disconnected. And flight controls were checked. So at this point I think we can go ahead and taxi. Taxi out to runway 11, and I'm just gonna go up to the Charlie taxiway here, and I'm going to do the run up at the end of Charlie. Let me go ahead and get a swig of coffee here real quick. So I'm just gonna taxi out to Charlie and do the run up before we enter the runway. There's nobody here at the airport or anywhere in the vicinity. And Charlie is right over there. So I am not using the AFE anymore. I believe it's detrimental. It can be detrimental. It's helpful when you first start out flying this aircraft because obviously there's a lot going on with power settings and lots of switches here. So it is helpful, but at the end of the day, all it is, it's a what do they call those things? It's basically just a script, right? That's running in the background, and it's executing based on certain parameters to be in the right condition, right? Whether it's the airspeed or whatever it is, it's looking for those parameters to be in the right state before it sets, presets power settings, flaps, and things like that. So, in that regard, I found the AFE, the automated or electronic flight engineer, it's helpful for newer pilots. They're just starting out with this aircraft, but very quickly I realized that it's detrimental. That script that's running, it's not that good. It can't accommodate every possible scenario, every possible situation out there. So so I stopped using it. I don't use it, and I don't really need to use it, and I'll demonstrate it during this flight, how easy it is to control the airplane without having to rely on this AFE. Alright, so let me just go ahead and advance the throttles to 1000 RPM here, and gonna do a run up, which will take about 5 minutes. We're gonna do the governor check first, and I'm just gonna flow through this really quick, essentially the same way like Rob does it in his videos, but I'm gonna go through it with the speed of light. But follow the same steps like he does it in his videos. Okay, so we're gonna do the governor check, prop feathering, we're gonna check prop sync, then we'll check the reverser operation, we'll check the magnetos, water injection pumps, and automatic feathering. Alright, so just bear with me here. I'm going to go ahead and advance that throttles to 1700 RPM. It's roughly about there. And bring the master RPM lever all the way back. RPM control neutral. Manual switches on high. Low. And back to neutral. Number 2 auto and master RPM forward. Advanced throttles to 25 inches. And let's do the manual feathering checks. 3 seconds for each. 1, 2, 3. And I can see it tripped. 1, 2, 3. Number 2 tripped. 1, 2, 3. Number 3 tripped. 1, 2, 3. Number 4 tripped. Okay, so prop number 2 low. Back to normal. And let's do prop sync number 3 auto, prop 3. Back to normal, that looks good. And idle, we're going to check the reversers. That looks good. 25 inches. Stable, let's go to 30 inches for field elevation. Fuel flow looks normal. BMEP readings are normal, and I'm going to do the magnetos check. 1 and 3 on left. Both. Right. Both. Same thing with 2 and 4. Left. Both. Right. Both. So all magnetos are operational. I'm just going to do all 4 pumps now. I believe Rob does 1 and 3 and then 2 and 4. But we have water pressure on all 4. And the water pressure is back down. And now the automatic feathering check. Number 1. I can hear it tripped. Just hear a little click. Yep. Number 1 tripped. Go ahead and reset that. Same thing with number 2. That tripped. Number 3. number 4. You can hear when it trips, it's making this little clicking sound. Reset and back down to 1000 RPM. And the run up is essentially complete. Super easy, nothing really to it. If you do it a couple times, it just becomes like second nature. That's it. Alright, so let's get ready for departure here. Fuel booster pumps. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and extend the landing lights. Lights, camera, and action. Preset flaps to 20. Alright, that looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and taxi out to the end of the runway. So just when, well, we'll talk about the takeoff when we're at the end of the runway there. Just go ahead. Connect the brakes. Clear. Clear right, clear left. So on departure, we're gonna climb above 6,000, left turn to 301, and intercept the radial 337. Coffee is good. So it's 8 o'clock, 8:10. I think our departure was supposed to be at 8 o'clock sharp. Sorry about that. So we're about 15 minutes late here. So on departure, power settings. I'm gonna advance the throttles up to the red line on the manifold pressure. I'm gonna go right up to the red line, and that's where I'm gonna keep it. But we are limited for on time. 2 minutes maximum before we start damaging the engine. So as soon as we're off the ground, I'm gonna pull up the gear, and I'm gonna reduce the power to METO, which is maximum except takeoff, which is gonna be about 45, 46 inches and 2600 RPM. Okay, so full power to the red. As soon as we're off the ground, I'm gonna reduce the power to METO, clean up the engine, accelerate, retract the flaps, clean up the airplane, and then I'm gonna reset the climb power, and climb power is going to be 40 inches, 2400 RPM. Simple, right? Not much to it. So before takeoff, checklist. Flight instruments checked, flaps set 20, cowl flaps 4, cowl flaps set, fuel booster pumps are on, cooling turbine off. Mixture inverter switches number 1 and engine instruments on standby. Water injection pumps will be off for this departure. Automatic feathering is armed, and the static vent is off, or it's on. Let's go to 30 inches. Stable, and I'm just gonna take it right up to the red line. Takeoff time is 8:16. Good. Let's go. V1 is 83. V2 is 98. V1, rotate. Positive rate. reduce power to MEDO, 45 inches. $2,600 RPM. Flaps 15. Looking for 6,000 feet. Gonna nose down a little bit and accelerate. Flaps 10. Flaps up. Landing light can come off. Goes 6,000 feet. Comes left turn. Go ahead and set climb power. 40 inches, 2,400 RPM. And we're getting on a heading of 301. So gear up and neutral. Flaps up, landing lights off. Just gonna roll out here. We should be on the left downwind to the runway, and there's the runway right there off to our left. $8,500. For more power. Go ahead and engage the autopilot at this point. Coming up on 10,000. Here's the radial coming in. Gonna check the outbound radial here. climbing out to 18,000. 18,000 on this flight. Do the after takeoff checklist. Gear up, flaps up, climb power is set. Water pumps off. Cylinder head temps are in the green. Landing lights off and retracted. Seat belts, no smoking signs are off. Windshield heat. It's on. And cooling turbine is normal. And we're going towards the TN NDB, which is up ahead of us. We're on course. I'm going to switch to the GPS tracking now. Oh, we are. We're already in GPS, okay. I thought I left it on localizer, but I guess I didn't. So this is Madagascar, the home of Komodo dragons. Alright, so let me just clean up here. We started the engines at 7:50. Just gonna write that down. Takeoff time was 8:17. About 17 minutes late here. I'll try to make up some of that time. So 14,500. We should be maxed out on the throttles here, and we are. Going to wait until we get to about 16,000 feet, and I'm going to switch over to the high blowers. Airspeed looks good. Climbing at 1,200 feet per minute. Looks like we're on track, on course. Cabin temperature is good. Cylinder temps normal. They should be around 200 normally. Carb air is good. Fuel pressure, oil pressure looks normal, everything looks good. So 1600 or 16,000 feet. I'm gonna go ahead and reduce 1 and 4 engines. Put them to about 27 inches. And engage the 1 and 4 blowers. Same thing with 3, 2, and 3. Coming up on 18,000 feet, which is our cruise altitude. And I'm just going to be rolling down the rate of descent, rate of ascent. Start leveling it off. One thing I forgot to do is set the altimeter to standard pressure 2992. So that's going to cause a little bit of an upset. Not too bad. That was my bad. Okay, so I'm just going to keep the power in as is for now, accelerate a little bit and then reduce to cruise power. And cruise power on high blower is going to be 2200 RPM. One 50 PSI BMEP. And I'm just going to do that now. Just going to reduce the BMEP to about 140. So RPM is inversely proportional to BMEP setting. So as I reduce RPM, BMEP is going to go up. So I'm going to start reducing the RPMs. .200 RPM. And advance the throttles to 150 BMEP. So BMEP is basically the pressure and PSI that's acting on the pistons, that's pushing the pistons down, right? So that's kind of a critical setting. It's kind of like riding a bicycle uphill when you get off the bike seat and put all your weight on the pedals. That's kind of the same thing that's happening here. So if you put, if you abuse the bike you put too much weight on the pedals, the chain could break, or something could break. So the same thing essentially here. So we try to keep that pressure in normal range, 150. So with 2200 RPM, 150 BMEP, that puts us in, gives us the brake horsepower of 1170. So the fuel flow looks good. Carb cylinder head temps are running a little bit low, so I'm gonna close cowl flaps, and this should bring the temperature up slightly to about 200. I'm gonna keep it around 200 here. Carb air looks normal. Oil temps, oil pressure looks in the green, normal, and fuel flow is normal. We are on course on speed. Ground speed is 256 knots. I can do the cruise check. Cruise check at this point. Cruise power is set. Mixture controls. Oops, that is something that I forgot to do. That's gonna drop the. That's gonna upset the power settings. So I'm gonna have to readjust. That's my bad. One thing is for sure, there's no such thing as a perfect flight. There's no perfect pilots out there, no perfect flights, everything, things happen. We just have to deal with it. So anyway, now it's back to normal, 2200 RPM. .150 psi of torque. Now the cruise power is set. And actually the fuel flow looks much better. Mixture controls, auto lean, hydraulic system bypass, can turn that off. Collar flaps closed, windshield heat set, fuel system selectors, main tanks, cross feeds are off, fuel booster pumps come off. Inverter switches, turn them all on, and cabin pressurization is set for 18,000 feet. I'm just going to adjust the landing for landing altitude. It's going to be 23 feet on landing, so we're just going to bring it down to 0. Heading 359. We crossed the TN already. The ADF is behind us. Heading of 359. Right about there. Ground speed 200 about 260 knots. And we're still over Madagascar. Madagascar is a big island, big land mass off the coast of Mozambique. But once we fly over the edge of Madagascar and actually get onto the Mozambique Channel, we're gonna be about halfway there at that point. Landing time is going to be approximately 9:42 local. It's 9:42 local or 14:42 Zulu. So let me switch this to Zulu time. It's like 17. Sorry. Let's keep it on local. I can make better sense of it. Okay, so it's going to be 9:42 local time. So we're landing in 1 hour. Really short flight. Kind of see where we are right now. We're on the way to Yuvgad, and then Mahajenga 112.5. Can put that in nav2. So Mahajenga is 127 miles. And that's essentially the coast of where we hit the coast of Madagascar. We're going to be in the channel. There's not much else going on right now. I'm gonna pause the recording, pause the video right now, just don't want to make it excruciatingly long. So we'll see y'all when we start getting ready for the descent. Hey folks, so we're about 20 minutes or 20 miles away from Mahajenga, the northwest coast of Madagascar. Just wanted to take a look at this area, how beautiful this looks. Look, the bay with all the deltas in the bay. There's probably really good fishing here, I am sure of it. For all the fishermen out there. But we're about to cross into the Mozambique Channel, and from there we're going to be on the way to Mayotte. I'll bring up the Google map here. So Mahajanga is up here, that bay that we're flying over. It's right under us. And we're going to be direct to Mayotte at that point. Landing in Pamandzi. Runway 34. So one interesting thing here about Google Maps is you can actually measure the distances if you wanted to. I'm not sure, most of you probably already know this. You can do like distance measurements here, so like runway length looks like 1.2 miles, statute miles, right? So 5,280 feet, 5,280 feet in a statute miles, something like that. So does that work out to be about 6,000 feet, roughly? And looking at the airport, 66,345 feet long. But again, runway 34, we only have 6,283 feet available, so it's slightly, what we have available is slightly shorter than what's published here. Not a big deal, but I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about descent planning, right? And for that, let's take a look at the weather at the arrival point. It really hasn't changed much, right? Altimeter 2979, 2979. Temperature is 79, dew point 88, and I believe that's in Fahrenheit. 6 miles, plus 6 miles visibility, and no ceiling, so few clouds, right? So we're going to be landing on runway 34. It looks like there's light wind, 10 knot wind coming straight down the runway, and we're going to be landing on runway 34 here. So what we have available for runway 34 is we have a VOR and NDB approach. Approaches available. There's a few other ones. There are 3 VOR approaches, 1 RNAV. So I think we're going to go with this one, the Yankee VOR Yankee runway 34. This one looks reasonable to me. There's an NDB approach here too. So for NDB, it's Dzaoudzi Foxtrot Juliet Oscar 341. So I can go ahead and reset that here. And I'm not going to use that, except that if something fails, like a radio navigation system fails, something catastrophic happens, right? So we just crossed it into the Mozambique Channel here just now. So something catastrophic fails, you know, we'll have a backup. So, you know, again, flight planning is more about like setting your plan, have plan A, have a plan B, maybe plan C, right? So you always have some fall back, never find yourself like in a dire straits situation where you have to come up with a plan under duress, right? So, you know, for that reason, I like to utilize every available. So, if, you know, if there are channels available on the radios or anything like that, in GPS or whatever it is, you know, I would utilize those. Would never leave those blank unless I'm out of options. So, and when I was going through flight training, there was a school, the King School, back then. I don't know if they're still operational. I believe they are. John and Martha King, some of the old timers here may know this because they went through the school just like everyone else. All the pilots back in the day that were trained by John and Martha King, and some of their videos, you know, training videos that they had, you know, they kept stressing that if you're not doing something, you know, while you're flying, if you're, you know, looking at your cell phone, or, you know, back then there were no cell phones, but if you're not doing anything, you're missing something, right? So the idea is, you know, the idea behind it is you should always be doing something in the cockpit, right? You always need to be looking ahead, planning ahead, monitoring the instruments, monitoring the navigation, you know, things like that. So that kind of stuck with me back, you know, from 30 years ago when I went through my initial training. So I just wanted to pass it on to you, and, you know, most of the pilots here, they know this, right? Those of you who have pilot license and have gone through the formal training, you know this, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. But, you know, some of the newer pilots may not know this. So you always, there's never a boring time in the cockpit, because if you're not doing something, you're missing something. Okay. So let's talk about the descent a little bit, right? So we talked about the VOR Yankee approach that we decided on. We'll put the NDB 332 as NDB, what's the frequency again? 341, right? So that one is already set. For VOR Yankee, VOR frequency is 113.5, and I have that one preset on NAV1 primary. And I will always also preset that on NAV2 standby, 113.5. I'll preset that on NAV2 on standby. NAV2 primary is on Mahajanga, the waypoint we just crossed. We're 20 miles northwest of it now. But as far as like the approach planning, VOR Yankee 3-4 approach really starts, the initial approach fix starts at the Javan waypoint. We're going to go for 6.1 miles to a waypoint called CD 34 Yankee, Charlie Delta 34 Yankee, right, which is going to be a 12-mile DME from Dzaoudzi VOR. And I apologize if I'm massacring the names here. I don't mean to. It's just my unfamiliarity with the region. So it looks like the minimum altitude here is recommended as 1,600 feet. Minimum safe altitude is 3,000 from the sector we're going to be coming in. So I'm going to plan to be at 3,000 feet at Jiban. We're at 18,000 feet now, so 18 minus 3 is 15. So we need to drop 15,000 feet. Plus I'm going to add another 10 miles for slowing down, dropping flaps maybe, I don't know. But we're going to need to slow down in order to start dropping the flaps and the gear, the lights and all that stuff like that. So I'm going to add additional 10 miles to the top of the descent, right? So to drop 15,000 feet, 15 times 5 is 75, unless my math is wrong. So 75 miles from Jiban, plus you know, from Jiban to the airport is another, say, 20 miles, right? 18 miles, 20 miles. So we'll call it 95 miles from the VOR is going to be our top of the center. 95 miles plus an additional 10 miles for slowing down. So that puts us at 105 nautical miles before we get to the airport, before the VOR, essentially. 105 nautical miles, we call it, right? So let me take a look at the flight plan, the OFP here that was calculated for me. That says top of descent. Top of descent is 119 nautical miles from the airport. You know, which is a little bit more, 14 miles more than what I just calculated, 105 nautical miles, which is fine. You know, I'm just gonna pick like an intermediate altitude, like 5,000 feet, say, or 6,000 feet, to slow down and then come down to 3,000, to be at 3,000 at Jiban. So we're gonna go from like maybe, you know, or maybe even go down to 4,000 feet and start slowing down there, kind of like an intermediate safe altitude, right above the MSA. So let's say 4,000 feet. So the way the OFP calculated this, 119 miles, that's going to be 47 miles from Suavi. So 47 miles from Suavi is going to be basically the top of descent for us. Maybe a few miles past that, but there's no reason, in my mind, there's no reason to push the top of descent further than it has to be. So it's better to have a little bit of room, a little bit more breathing room to configure. So I'm just going to stick with this. This is more conservative than what I just calculated in my head, and so I'm just going to stick with this. So 47 miles from Suavi is going to be our top of descent point. So hopefully that makes sense. But also, with all that said, I'm gonna go ahead and set up the approach for the VOR Yankee 3-4 approach. So 47 miles from Suavi is going to be our top descent. And this is the remaining flight plan. And so let me go into the procedures. Set up for the approach, and that's VOR Yankee 34. We're going to take it from Jivan. I'm going to go ahead and load it. So if we take a look here at the flight plan, we're going from Mahajanga or whatever that place was that we entered the Mozambique Channel. So we're going from there to waypoint Tican. We got 5 miles to Tican or Tican, whatever it is, and then we're gonna hit Suavi. And then we're going to the DZP VOR. I'm not going to go to the DZP VOR now because I'm just going to go straight to Jivan. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that one. Certainly not going to go to the airport, so I'm going to remove that. And from Suavi, we're going to go directly to Jivan. But you can see here there's a break here, right? There's from the en route navigation to the approach navigation, we have a break here, and this is one of the points where the GPS can break down, right? It can, you know, if there's a huge course correction here, it may not know how to intercept it, right? So what I'm gonna do is, you know, after we get to Suavi, but before we get to Jivan, I'm gonna turn off the autopilot tracking, right? And I'm gonna go direct to Jivan from that point on. So we're gonna get on course first, and then I'm gonna manually switch to Jivan. And I don't know what it is, you know, sometimes it works and I don't have to worry about it, sometimes it doesn't work, and so just to be on the safe side, what I do is, you know, once we're on course to Jivan, I'm going to disconnect the autopilot. I'm going to go direct to Jivan and re-engage the autopilot just to make sure that we don't have any issues. So after Jivan, we're going to go to this waypoint CD34 Yankee. And that's going to put us on final approach course, 12 miles out. We're going to drop down to 16 feet and go to 1,600 feet altitude, go to a 5.3 DME from the VOR. And from there, we're going to be essentially visual, but we're going to start the descent at 140 knots. You know, the descent rate is going to be 743 feet per minute. You know, so if I set like 700 to 800 feet per minute descent, that should put us right on track for landing. Category C. Minimums for us, we are Cat C based on the final approach speed on the reference final approach speed, which is going to be 125 with full flaps or 135 in a clean configuration. You know, that puts us in Cat C category. The minimums are going to be 630 feet on the altimeter, which will give us 607 off the ground. So if we had like a radio altimeter, which we don't, right, it would read 607. But we're going to be out 630 feet on the altimeter setting for minimums. But we don't have to worry about it today because, you know, the weather is going to be pretty good. That's really it. So 47 miles from Jiban is going to be our top of descent point. And we're going to start a gradual descent to 5,000 feet or 4,000 feet. And we're going to start slowing down and cleaning up the aircraft or setting up for landing. Hopefully that makes sense. So right now we're 46 miles from Suavi, and I think we can start the descent at this point, right? So I'm gonna drop the superchargers. And start begin a gradual foot per minute descent. Going down to 4,000 feet. For power setting, basically 26 inches is what's recommended, I guess. That's what the AFE recommended. So that's where I'm going to keep that power setting. And also, since I started descending, we just picked up the NDB and the VOR, and we're 99 miles away from it, so our fuel situation. Our fuel situation is awesome. Pressurization set. Windshield heat. Let's keep it as is for now. Cabin temp is normal. basically nudging down the throttles a little bit. I'm going to do the descent checklist at about 10,000. When we cross 10,000, we'll do the descent checklist. Cylinder temps a little bit cool. But otherwise in the green, normal, so I'm not going to touch that now. I'm just going to leave it at 0. Carb air is on the lower end of the yellow arc, which is the freezing point. So, but there's no visible moisture. So there's not much to worry about there. Can still pick up ice, carb ice. Air is like a sponge. There's always some moisture in the air when you compress it. It's like compressing this wet sponge. You might get some moisture out of dry air. But there's no indication. Looking at the RPMs and manifold pressure, there's no indication that there's any icing going on here. So just keep an eye on it. Just continuing 1,000 foot per minute descent rate, adjusting the power. Do 26 inches. Let me take a look at the weather. The altimeter setting is 2982, light winds from the northwest. Good visibility. This weather was reported 3 minutes ago, so it's fairly current. 2982. I'm just going to go ahead and preset the altimeter now. High to low, look out below, right? Low to high, you're all right. Another saying from the John and Martha King. Ground speed 260 knots. We're looking for 10,000 feet. Transition altitude at this airport is 4,000. So that's where we're going to level off. Drop the power a little bit. coming up on 11,000. Air A2. Yep. Keep dropping the power. Power keeps coming back. Essentially just keeping it at 25.6 inches all the way down. Our planned landing time is 9:42. It's 9:37. So we got about 5 minutes to go according to that, but we were 17 minutes late taking off, so we will add 15 minutes to that. So about 20 more minutes to go. Across 10,000 feet. Keep nudging that power down a little bit. We just crossed crossing the Suave. And on track to Jivan. So once it levels off, I'm just going to recalibrate the GPS now just to make sure we don't lose track of it. Seems to be tracking fine, right? No problem. But once we get to Jivan, it might have an issue. So I'm just going to take some preemptive steps. Windshield heat. Okay, adjust that, and let's go ahead and get the hydraulics online. And hydraulic pressure is coming up. One thing about the gauges is a lot of people don't know this. Some people do. The gauge manufacturers, they manufacture their gauges where halfway on the scale is about normal. So if you're about halfway on the scale of any gauge, you know that you're in a safe range. So the same thing applies here on the hydraulic gauge. You know, somewhere halfway is probably normal, but it should be, hydraulics should be between 2600 and 3050 psi, which is what we have. Let's do the descent checklist. Superchargers low, windshield heat set, altimeters are set. 292. Fuel tank selectors, cross feeds. We're on main tanks, cross feeds are off. The hydraulic system bypass is on. I don't even look at the tablet now, you know, unless it's like hooking up ground power or whatever, opening up the hatches, doors, you know. Other than that, I don't really need it. I know it's fine. Going down to 4,000 feet, we got 2 to go. .38 miles from Jivan. Keeping the power back 25, 26 inches. Ground speed about 240. Not seeing any signs of land yet. It's up ahead someplace. Looking for the land. Coming up on 4,000, which is the transition altitude for this airport. And start leveling off a little bit. Reducing the rate of descent. That is good right there. We're gonna start slowing down a little bit. So we're 30 miles from Jivan. Well, I'm just gonna keep the power at 90 psi. B-map for now 25 inches. Let the airplane bleed off some of the airspeed because we're coming up to Jivan. I'd like to be around 3,000 feet at Jivan, so I may want to drop another 1,000 feet once I'm, you know, slow enough and have at least 10 degrees flaps out to help us with the descent without increasing the airspeed. But as you can see, airspeed is dropping off. Right when it gets to be about 74 is when I'm gonna deploy maybe one notch of flap and bring the lights in. The landing light extension is below 173 indicated airspeed. flap extension 0 to 30 is 174. Right. So we're at 176 now. $20 miles from the G-Von. Alright, so let me do the GPS reset then. Direct to G-Von. Activate. And re-engage. 320 on the heading. How are we doing on airspeed? It's wobbling around 174, 175, something like that. Do one notch of flaps, 10 degrees. 18 miles from G-Von. And landing lights. Lights on. Fuel boosters. Inverters. Set and mixture. Auto rich. Hydraulics are set. Speed is good, 10 miles from G-Von. Let's do the approach check. Seat belts, no smoking. Lights on. Mixture controls, auto rich. Carb heat, cold. Fuel booster pumps on. Converter switches set and cooling turbine. Turn that off. Alright, so let me go ahead and get down to about 3,000. Final approach course is 332. There's the island of Mayotte. We're at 3,000 feet. And 23 inches, 2200 RPM. Miles from Jivan. So the only thing that we have to do now is set up for landing. It's going to be landing lights, just to rehearse the landing checklist. Landing lights, they're already on, so I'm not going to need to worry about that. Landing gear, obviously cooling flat or cowl flaps, we'll go to 4. We'll do that on short final. Props 2400 RPM. And flaps going to be 40 for landing on this one. So as soon as we cross Jivan, I'm going to get down to about 2,000 feet. Actually 1,800. 1,800. 1,600. So I can do one more notch of flaps, flaps 15, and start the descent to 1600 at this point. Final approach course is 332, looking for 1600 feet, and DME 5.3. It's going to be our FAF, final approach fix. Minimum, it's going to be 630. Okay, so let me go ahead and switch over to localizer. Drop flaps 20. And looking for 1600 feet. Localizer intercepted. Right about there and looking for 5.3 DME. And 10 miles out, so 5 more miles to go. Final approach speed is going to be 135. VREF is 95. And in dirty configuration is going to be final approach speed is 125. So 125 to 135. Three miles to go. We're gonna exit right on Alpha. Drop the gear down. Call flap set, 5.1 DME. Flaps 30. I see the runway. And now pitch is going to basically control the airspeed at this point. Try pitch for 130. And power for altitude. Okay, flaps 40. RPM. Gear down green. Flaps 40, 2400 RPM. Call flap set. Little bounce. Can I make it? Can I? All right. Flaps up, RPMs forward. Welcome to Mayotte. Let's see if I can align on this line here. Perfect, but it's good enough. Sometimes good enough is good enough. Right? We're not shooting for an A, we just need a B. Parking brakes, 1000 RPM. Alright, time now 10:04. We're planning to be on the ground at 9:52, so about 12 minutes late. It's okay. All good. Got off the tanks. Ground power. Jocks. Hear the NDB going off. All set. Alright folks, well thanks for joining me on this flight. Hopefully this was informative. If you liked what you saw, please give it a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. Just to check the engines. As you can see, the engines are in the green. Nothing wrong with it, so don't really need this during the flight, but you know, it helps when you first start out, I guess. Anyway, take care everyone. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.